Welcome to Beyond the Coverage. I'm Chris Horner. In today's episode, I like to talk about some concussions. Now, what does it mean for the riders? What does it mean for the teams? What does it mean for us fans watching it at home? Well, of course, it's always about the rider first and foremost because they're the one experienced the concussion. They're the ones that could have the long-term effect on it. Now, I'm bringing this up right now on Beyond the Coverage just because Lisa Longoborghini had a concussion protocol done when she crashed at Tour of Flanders about 2 weeks ago. She's getting ready to do Dupranzapil. Now, throughout my career, I've had about at least 5 good ones that I can think of. When I was 15, 16 years old, I was living in San Diego, California, in Murphy Canyon there, right by old Qualcomm Stadium, and I was going for a ride with the manager of the bike shop, Wes Drum. His dad, Hal Drum, owned the bike shop, and we were going out for an early morning, leaving straight from my garage there in Murphy Canyon, military housing, and we are going to go out and do the trails there in Mission Trails. We left the house, going down the sidewalk, and I was jumping from the sidewalk onto the street, but there's grass in between the sidewalk and the street proper, so there's a little bit of a curb there where the grass was wet and moist from the early morning ride because, of course, we were starting just as the sun was coming up in San Diego. So when I came off the paved bike trail, and went over and hit the curb, the front tire swashed out on me. And once it washed out on me, I hit my chin on the concrete there on the street. Got up, and then my manager of the bike shop there at House Bike Center, Wes, he said, "Hey, do you want to keep going?" I said, "Yeah, sure, we keep going, no problem." Remember, I was about 16, give or take. So I jumped on the mountain bike and we started riding, and about 30 minutes into the mountain bike ride is when I started losing the vision and my eyesight of the trail. Started getting incredibly super narrow. Luckily, it was a trail that I rode on quite often because it was just in the backyard of my house there in Murphy Canyon. So as we were dropping down the trails, I was doing more memory off the trail than anything else with very little vision. And then by the time we got back to my house, remember, this is way back when I was 15, 16 years old. So we're talking about late 80s, early 90s and stuff. And so when we're at that moment, when we get back to the house, now it's been a little while since I crashed, and we had this great combination lock, one just like this one here that was on the house garage. And back in the day, you had to spin it like this, flip the latch, pull it over, and pull the garage open because we didn't have automatic garage door opener in Murphy Canyon. So I get back there, and I'm working it with my hands like this, and my head knows the correct numbers to stop at, but I can't tell my hand exactly when to stop. So I'd see the number coming up, and I'd always pass it. And it took me, 20 times before I could finally get the combination right. That was when I realized there's something wrong. So I had my parents, who were military at the time, take me over to the Balboa Military Hospital. Once I'm there, I'm freaking out, and it's amplifying and getting worse and worse throughout the day. And the doctors are looking over my parents, and because I'm freaking out on the table, they're yelling and screaming at my parents, "We got to get a drug test for this kid. He's clearly on drugs." My parents looked over at the doctor, says, "Our kid's not on drugs." The doctor, of course, said no parents knows if their kid's on drugs. We got to test him. He's flipping out. He's got to be on drugs. So they had me do a drug test, and what was really odd about it in those times, and we're talking about the late 80s, right? They walked me over to do a drug test to the bathroom, and then no one thought it would be a good idea to stay with me after I left the bathroom. I did the sample, handed it to whoever the assistant was there, of the doctor, the nurse, or whatever. They walked off and left me there to finish up my business in the bathroom. By the time I finished up my business in the bathroom and walked out in the hallway, I couldn't figure out even how to get back to my room there at the hospital, so I was just wandering around the halls there until finally someone got me and brought me back into the room. Now, of course, they tested the sample. It was negative. I didn't do drugs. I didn't do alcohol. I was 100% into my cycling at that point in time, and I wasn't interested in anything else other than getting fast and riding my bike. But that was my first experience with a concussion. Now, it took a little bit of just a couple days to recover from that, and then I was fine and back to normal, what I thought I was anyways at that point in time. We fast forward a little bit more in throughout my cycling career, and I remember doing cyclocross, and I got knocked out. We were talking about 06, 07. I was with my home skill at DEE, and we were doing races there just outside of Philly, and I hit my head real soft and easy, got up, rolled out of it with no problem, got up, jumped on my cyclocross bike, finished the race, and I finished second. Had no effort whatsoever that I feel from hitting my head. In fact, it was so smooth, I never even dawned to put any energy into worrying about a concussion, because when I flipped over the bars, it was so smooth that I didn't even think twice about it. And then when we were driving home, we stop off at the grocery store, and I start feeling half my body start going numb, with my arms going numb and stuff like that, and a little bit getting numb up here and stuff. And those were definite signs of concussion. but they can come on much later when you're a professional cyclist, and they can come on days later. If I fast forward you all the way up to that 2011 Tour de France, well, that day I rode on autopilot all the way to the finish of the stage of the Tour de France, about 20 miles on autopilot, and had no idea where I was in the race.
I don't understand where.
We're going, Chris.
Yeah, but I don't understand it. When did that crash, though? Has it been a long time?
No, not really. Yeah.
How long? I don't understand. How long ago was it?
It was about 25K from the finish.
We've been chasing for 25K?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
And clearly, guys around me at that point in time knew I had no idea where I was. And if you see the video afterwards where they had to bring me off in the ambulance to the hospital.
Did I finish then?
Yeah, you did finish. You did finish.
Okay.
It was scary.
You're not here at the hospital?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yeah, for sure.
But I finished?
Yes.
Finished. Yeah, right. You're finished.
Okay, I don't understand, but is there a big bruise? Did I hit my face or something?
Yeah, you have small injuries, small bounce.
Well, you know, for sure I had a concussion that day, and I did not even wake up. I was up the whole time, but did not wake up in my brain. The light bulb in my brain did not come on and stay on until it was over 8 a.m. the next morning. So almost a 24-hour period had erased from my mind at that point in time with that concussion. Now after that morning when I woke up and I'm looking at the team doctor, I look over and the team doctor's name, Belgium guy, Dog. I said, Dog, what's happening? What's going on? He said, you crashed in the Tour de France. We took you to the hospital. You stayed overnight here. We're going to send you home back to the U.S. I said, you said I finished, right? And he said, yeah, you finished the race. So I said, well, quit joking. Grab my stuff. Let's sneak out of here. We'll jump in the car and we'll go over and start the Tour de France stage. Now, of course, I hadn't seen the pictures. And this was one of the very first times in the cycling history that a rider had been caught on video visibly having the effects of a concussion, where I had no idea where I was, had no idea really who I was talking to, and I was finishing a stage at the Tour de France, coming up to the finish line and asking old teammates of mine that were in the gruppetto there finishing last on that stage of the Tour de France, stage 8. As we're coming across the line, I'm looking over at Gert Stegels, and I'm asking Stegels, where are we at? And he looks back over at me, and he told me later, when I saw him again at the beginning of the next season, he told me later that I'd asked him that question about 20 times, if not more, and I was asked it to him 200 meters before the finish line at the Tour de France, and I still didn't know where I was. So he was very concerned for me at that point in time. And then when I got up into the team bus, the Radio Shack team bus that I have the jersey behind me on, when I got up to the bus, I kept asking everybody where I was, what's going on, and where are we at. That's when they started to realize, because throughout the cycling time when you're racing, multiple people see you, but they see you at different times and points, so they put together at a different pace. Now, we can fast forward and understand that when you see the helicopter angle and they're flipping me over and I'm not moving, and you can understand later when I'm crossing the line and we see the journalists there asking me questions, and I'm asking them, I don't know where I'm at. We understand later when I'm in the team bus and I'm asking all my teammates the same question, and this is the first time where they have me there for a significant amount of time, that there's a problem. And of course they had to bring me to the hospital after that. My Tour de France had finished. But for me, waking up that next morning at 8 a.m. in the hospital, I have no recollection, no memory at all of that. So I'm just telling the team doctor, quit messing around. We're at the Tour de France. Let's get going and get back to the Tour. Now later I ended up getting a blood clot from that same crash when I was back here in Bend, Oregon, and traveled up to my lungs, and it collapsed my lungs, and so I almost died that night. But they rushed me over to the hospital in time, and luckily a great doctor friend of mine had talked me into on the phone before I called him before I went to bed, and he said, you got to go to the hospital right now for sure with those signs. And he arranged everything, so by the time I got into the hospital and wasn't able to breathe through that lung, they had already had me on blood thinners and ready to go there at the emergency room, and he got me out. So there's always signs of concussion that, of course, the director sportifs, the riders, the family of the riders, the teammates of the riders that are in the race that can see signs of different riders. We don't have to look too far, but just to go back, of course, when we're talking Romain Bardet, when he crashed at the 2020 Tour de France on stage 13, that you can see signs of a rider having concussions on that stage 13 of the 20 Tour de France, when Romain Bardet was getting up and all wobbly all over the place. Now you have to remember, you have some cycling shoes on. They don't have great traction on the street. So a lot of people, if they only see you for a brief second, they can see that and think that it's a concussion, but it might be an issue with balance. But then if you see it continue to happen, then you know for sure it's a concussion where you need a concussion protocol. And someone hopefully has to keep eyes on a rider while they're going through that procedure to make sure that afterwards they're still good, because just like I told you with my cyclocross story, it could happen hours after the event. So anytime you come in and you see the Romain Bardet story of that stage 13 of the 20 Tour de France, sure, the first person that comes in contact, if you look at the video, and I'll post it up here, and you see that race official marshal there as Romain Bardet's falling on his leg, well, he's not actually got eyes on Romain Bardet. He could just think that Romain Bardet went to get up and maybe his leg's sore or maybe his shoe slipped out from underneath him because he doesn't have eyes. So that rider can miss it. But then once you go into race protocol, which they should always have, is eyes on specific riders that have shown any signs like Romain Bardet did at that Tour de France. We go back in time and we start looking at Tom Squinge at the Tour of California when he had so many problems after his crash on the descent where it was dangerously close to getting ran over from the groups that had gotten dropped going up the climb, coming down, and just barely passing Tom Squinge. So you have to take this serious, and the most difficult thing about the concussion is no one understands how serious it is, so no one understands how serious to take it. So we fast forward and we go into Elisa Longo Borghini's crash at the Tour of Flanders. Now remember, it's not really caught on video, or I didn't see it on video. I just saw the crash where she's down, and then of course later she's out of the race. Now she's coming back after 2 weeks. This story is not about Lisa Longo Borghini and whether or not if she's ready to start at the Principale. It's about how the director sportifs, the loved ones around her, her teammates, and herself in general have to take everything so serious and keep an eye on her throughout the racing. Now, talking 2 weeks later, certainly I've had problems when I crashed at the 2012 Olympics. That year I finished the race, but still had concussion problems there at that race where I just, again, lost vision like I did when I was back at 15, 16 years of age, but was able to finish the race. Later, I went on to do the Tour of Colorado, and that crash at the Olympics had repercussions in terms of on my fitness, on how I felt throughout the Tour of Colorado, which was 2 weeks later. So now we're talking about the Principale for Elisa Longo Borghini 2 weeks later after Tour of Flanders getting ready to start, and some other things to keep an eye on whether or not if some of the concussion problems that she might have had at Tour of Flanders, whether or not they still exist, could be in just her overall fitness. As strange as it sounds, whatever's going on in the head, if it's badly enough, it will affect the body for a long enough time, and it will affect your performance. So if you feel any of those effects possibly later, 2 weeks later, it might be a good idea to back away from the racing, go back into some easier or very light training or no training at all. Each person's concussions problem that they're going to have is going to be real specific for them. As I've told you already, that 2011 Tour de France has had problems that continue even to this day, where I have a word in my head and I can't get that word out of my head, so I have to remap my brain and find another word to use quickly to put in its place. That is the problems that you have with concussions. They are long-term, and of course, every professional athlete's going to have them, and every athlete basically is going to have them, because anytime you fall down, you can have them. And just like my story that I told you in 2006 and 7 when I was a cyclocross rider, I'm telling you, I never even felt hitting my head. I rolled out of that, jumped back on my bike and finished second, and never felt that, but still got signs later in that day, at least 2-3 hours later even, where I had signs. So keep it in mind, if you're a director sportif, if you're an official, if you're a teammate, if you're a loved one, and you're seeing some signs of a rider that went through and had a concussion already, keep an eye later, because certainly it can still progress and still get worse, even up to 2 weeks later. Now, I'm not in any way saying that Lisa Longo Borghini should not be racing. That is not what I'm saying. Every rider has to make that call. What I'm saying is, if you're a director sportif and those officials, please keep an eye on those riders. All right, like and subscribe. I'll see you guys for the next video real soon.